My mother pinned me to the floor while my father finalized my wedding to a dangerous older man. I escaped and laid everything bare. Now, years later, she's sick and pleading for me to come home because I'm family. In my family, girls were handed off the moment their first period arrived. It didn't matter if you were 12, 13, or 14. Once there was blood, it meant you were ready for a husband at least 3 times your age. I grew up swallowing that belief, and it didn't seem terrible until I turned 11. That's when I watched my cousin Mayam get promised to a 43-year-old man just 3 days after her first period. His 2 previous wives never made it past 19. That night, I decided to stop eating enough on purpose. Not from hating food or my body, but because I saw that the thinner girls were the last to menstruate, and I knew it was the only card I could play. Later, I found out your body actually needs a certain amount of fat to kickstart puberty, lol. The other girls taunted me, skeleton, bones, but I didn't care. Girls my age were already betrothed to men with children older than them. The training didn't stop for me, though. Every Friday from 1 a.m. until 10 a.m., I served food to male family members for hours without a word. If I met their eyes or made a sound while serving, I got 10 belt lashes. I had to hold hot pots with bare hands to toughen them for kitchen work, and each night my mother smeared skin-whitening cream all over my face for beauty. Aside from starving in secret, I played the perfect daughter. I kept the act, going flawlessly, gushing about future kids. By 14, still without a period, something changed everything. For context, we were in the USA the entire time, lol. My mother had convinced us this was normal, and that any girl who refused was destined to die alone, ugly and worthless. One teacher forced a meeting after I accidentally wore a t-shirt to school, and she noticed how gaunt I was. When she stepped out to use the bathroom, she forgot to lock her drawer. Inside were books on marriage law, pamphlets titled things like Your Rights as a Young Teenager and When Culture Becomes Crime. My jaw dropped as I read. It was the first time I learned that marriage under 18 was illegal. No cultural carve-outs, no parental consent loopholes. I slipped the thinnest pamphlet into my waistband and took it home. For weeks after my parents thought I was asleep, I memorized every line, CPS hotlines, shelter addresses, the exact phrases that trigger a mandatory report. I learned teachers, counselors, and doctors are required by law to report suspected abuse. So I started a wife skills circle in my uncle's tool shed. 6 younger cousins who hadn't bled yet, all desperate to dodge the same fate. In whispers, I taught them everything. Which adults at school are mandated reporters? How to say the precise words that would start an official investigation. We practiced. They're forcing me to marry. I'm only 13. Please help. At 15, my body betrayed me. The blood came during morning food prep, soaking my white dress. My mother's joyous scream summoned every woman in the house. They kissed my cheeks, congratulating me for being lucky. By night, my father had already selected my husband, Hamuda Bibi, a construction magnate who had buried 2 wives before they reached 23. The certificates listed kidney failure. The women whispered it was too many pregnancies too young. 2 days later, my cousin Anna, the shed girl, got her period too. Within hours, they promised her to a 51-year-old collector of wives with 8 children older than her. I watched the light die in her eyes while they debated her bride price like she was livestock. That night, I slid her my notebook. Every shelter number, every legal line, every escape plan. Tomorrow, I whispered, tell the science teacher. Use the exact words. Her hands trembled as she took it. What about you? My wedding isn't for 2 weeks. I'll figure something out, I said, shaking. I was wrong. That night, there was a knock on the door. CPS. My father's expression flickered from confusion to fury as they asked about Anya, underage brides, forced marriages. They needed to talk to all girls in the family under 18. The moment they left, the family circled like wolves. Someone had poisoned the girls with lies, with Western propaganda. They tore the house apart, hunting the culprit. My journal turned up in the tool shed within an hour, crammed with phone numbers and statutes. My father burned it in front of Eads. Everyone calling me diseased, contaminated, and, his favorite, a cancer to be cut out. The wedding is tomorrow, he announced, before she infects anyone else. Dawn came too fast. In 1 hour, they'd dress me in red and gold and deliver me to a man who'd unalived 2 girls already. Footsteps neared my door. I grabbed a plastic bag I'd stashed days earlier. One change of clothes, the shelter addresses copied from memory, and the $20 I'd stolen from my mother's purse over months, $1 at a time. The handle turned. I doubled over, clutching my stomach, groaning, not entirely faking it. My mother swept in, already in her finest. "Up," she ordered. "Theshan arrives in 30 minutes. I groaned louder, pressing my abdomen. "Mama, something's wrong." She frowned, approaching warily. "A sick bride is a bad omen." "What did you eat?" "Nothing," I gasped, staggering toward the door. "I need the bathroom." She gripped my arm. "You went 20 minutes ago." "Please," I begged, crying now. The fear made it easy. "It hurts so much." With a hiss, she let go. 5 minutes. The aunties are waiting." I lurched down the hall, hiding the plastic bag under my loose nightgown. Inside the bathroom, I locked the door and stepped onto the toilet. The ceiling tile I'd loosened weeks ago slid aside. I shoved the bag up, then actually used the toilet to make it convincing. 3 minutes. I flushed, ran the water, and moaned. Again. "Mama, I can't stop my stomach." Her fist pounded the door. "Open it now." "I can't," I cried, climbing back on the toilet. The tiny window above had been painted shut years ago, but I'd spent nights prying it loose with a butter knife. "Just another minute," I begged. More pounding now, multiple voices. My aunts had joined her. I shoved the frame with everything I had. The paint cracked, then gave. Cool air rushed in. The opening was tiny, meant for ventilation, not escape. But months of starvation had made me small enough. "She's taking too long," my father thundered. "Break it down." I yanked the bag from the ceiling and pushed it through the window first. Then I hauled myself up, shoulder scraping the frame. The door shuddered under bodies slamming into it. My hips stuck. I bit my tongue and twisted sideways. The lock splintered just as my legs cleared. I dropped 6 feet to wet grass. My ankle twisted, not broken. Shouts erupted behind me. I ran barefoot, nightgown flapping. Through our yard, into the neighbors. Dogs barked. Motion lights blinked on. I kept going. Every house on our block was another family from our community. Any one of them would hand me back without hesitation. I cut through the Hassan's yard, past the Mahmoud's pool, around the Sal's shed. Engines roared to life behind me. Then, another. They mobilized fast. I ducked behind the Abdullah's garbage bins as headlights swept by. My cousin Omar's voice carried. "Check every street. She can't be far." The main road was 3 blocks. The bus stop, 4. I'd mapped this escape 100 times in my head, but never barefoot, never with my heart trying to explode. I darted between houses using parked cars as cover. Blood smeared my footprints on the concrete. A shard of glass jabbed into my heel. I couldn't stop. "There!" Kareem shouted from the left. A car screeched around the corner. I dove into Mrs. Chen's rose bushes, thorns shredding my nightgown and skin. She wasn't from our community. Maybe she wouldn't recognize me. I limped across her yard into the alley. The bus stop came into view just as the bus pulled up. I burst from between buildings, waving wildly. The driver, an older black woman, took in my bloodied feet and ripped gown and held the door. I climbed aboard and froze. No money. I'd left the $20 in the bag. "Please," I whispered. "I just need to get downtown. I'll pay you back." An elderly woman stood, feeding exact change into the machine. "Sit down, child," she murmured, guiding me into the seat beside her and handing me tissues. The bus pulled away as Omar's car skidded into the lot. I ducked below the window, but not before seeing his face twisted with rage. The woman beside me shifted, shielding me from view. We rode in silence to downtown. As she got off, she pressed a $10 bill into my hand. "Whatever you're running from," she whispered, "don't go back." The courthouse loomed, a massive building I'd only seen through car windows. I limped through the metal detectors, leaving bloody prints on the marble. Security exchanged glances but didn't stop me. At family court, a clerk with kind eyes took one look and came around the counter. "Honey, do you need medical attention?" "Emergency protective order," I gasped, using the exact words I'd memorized. "I'm 15. They're forcing me to marry today. Please." She helped me fill out forms, asking where I'd be staying. I gave a shelter address from memory and prayed they had space. My phone, forgotten in the bag earlier, began to ring. Mom, Dad, Omar, unknown numbers. Voicemails stacked up. I didn't have to listen to know dishonor, shame, curse, cancer. The clerk disappeared with my petition and returned with a judge who read it right there in the lobby. "Granted," he said. "Emergency order effective immediately. Full hearing in 2 weeks." I clutched the paper and limped outside. The shelter was 12 blocks away. I made it 3 before calling to confirm a bed. "We're completely full," the voice said. "We can put you on a wait list for Thursday." Thursday? 3 days with nowhere to go. I remembered Ms. Rodriguez, the teacher who'd forgotten to lock her drawer. Maybe that hadn't been an accident. 3 buses and 2 hours later, I stood outside Jefferson High. Saturday meant the campus should be empty, but her car was there. I found her in her classroom with a red pen and a stack of essays. She looked up and dropped the pen. Oh my God. In seconds, she was beside me, taking in my bloody feet, shredded gown, the protective order clutched in my fist. "Sit, don't move." She returned with the nurse's kit and began cleaning my feet. That's when the real tears came, not the fake ones from the bathroom. "They were going to make me marry him today," I sobbed. "He unalived 2 wives already. I got the order, but the shelter is full. I have nowhere to go. They're looking for me." She pulled out her phone and called the CPS emergency line. "They have to place you somewhere safe," she said. The voice on the other end wasn't reassuring. 15? We need evidence of immediate danger. A protective order based on claims isn't enough. Has she been physically harmed? Ms. Rodriguez's face hardened. "She's got glass in her feet from running barefoot. She's covered in cuts. Self-inflicted during escape doesn't count. We need evidence of abuse from the family." My phone rang again. "Ms. Rodriguez?" answered. "Hello?" Her face went pale. "Mr. Habibi? No, your daughter isn't. What? No, she's..." I heard my father on speaker, smooth and steady, his business voice. "She's ill," he said. "Mental problems. She needs her medication. We are very worried." Ms. Rodriguez hung up. "How did he know you were here?" "My phone," I breathed. "Of course. They were tracking me." "Wipe it," she said. "Factory reset. Now." While I reset the phone, she called supervisors, social workers, legal aid. The same answer each time. Without immediate physical danger or stronger evidence, their hands were tied. That's when we heard car doors slam outside. Ms. Rodriguez locked the classroom and pulled the blinds. "Stay quiet." Footsteps echoed in the hall. Several men. Arabic, then English. "We know she's here," my father called. "Her phone shows this location. She's sick. She needs help." Polite knocking. Harder. "I'm calling 911, Ms. Rodriguez whispered. I grabbed her hand. "Wait, let me show you something." I rolled up my sleeves, revealing circular scars from the pot training and the fresh bruises from that morning when my mother tried to force me into the wedding dress. I lifted my nightgown enough to show belt marks across my back from years of Friday service. Her hands shook as she photographed everything. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" "I thought it was normal," I whispered. "Until I read your pamphlets." She called 911. "There are multiple men trying to get into my classroom. I have a student in danger. Please hurry." The pounding intensified. Then my uncle's voice. "We have her medication. She's bipolar, schizophrenic. She lies." "Check the parking lot cameras," I urged. "I came alone. If they have meds, they brought them." She rang the security office. Mr. Williams said he was pulling up the footage. Sirens wailed in the distance. The pounding stopped, footsteps retreated. By the time officers arrived, my father had transformed again, back to concerned parent in an expensive suit holding prescription bottles with my name on them. "Thank God you're here," he told police. "My daughter is very ill. She invents terrible stories about our family. Officers separated us. One stayed with me and Ms. Rodriguez. Two spoke with my father and uncles. She's never been on medication, Ms. Rodriguez said firmly. I've taught her for 2 years. Look at her injuries. The officer glanced at my feet. The cuts and bruises could be self-inflicted if she was having an episode. Check when those prescriptions were filled, I said suddenly. If I'm so sick, why isn't there a record? No doctor visits, no therapy? Ms. Rodriguez opened her laptop. I have her essays, months' worth, about family traditions and cultural expectations. She documented everything between the lines. She'd saved them all. Assignments where I tucked truths beneath the surface. Traditional. Cooking lessons were burned hands. Preparing for marriage meant beatings for eye contact. The officer read, frowning deeper with every page. Mr. Williams arrived with security footage showing my father and uncles arriving already holding the prescription bottles. Anya, I blurted. Call Anna Mansour. She reported yesterday. She knows. But when Ms. Rodriguez searched, she found they'd moved out of state that morning. No forwarding address. Disconnected phone. My father sensed the tide turning and cracked. He barked orders in Arabic, gesturing wildly. What's he saying? The officer asked. He told them to call the family lawyer and muttered that the dowry is non-refundable. That was his mistake. Sir? The officer said, expression hardening. What dowry? My father stilled. I misspoke. My English. Your English seemed fine 5 minutes ago, the officer replied. The next hour blurred. More police, a CPS emergency supervisor, someone from the DA's office. My father swung between threats of lawsuits and pleas about family honor. My uncles invoked religious freedom and parental rights. But the evidence stacked up. Essays, injuries, fake prescriptions, security footage, and the emergency protective order from that morning. She's a minor with credible allegations of abuse and forced marriage, the CPS supervisor concluded. We're placing her in emergency protective custody. My father exploded. He lunged at me, screaming in Arabic about dishonor and curses. 2 officers restrained him as he spat threats about what happens to girls who betray family. Ms. Rodriguez squeezed my hand as they led him away. The placement coordinator arrived 20 minutes later. A tired woman named Margaret pulled from her weekend. One look at my feet, and she called for medical transport. We need those cleaned properly, she said, helping me into a wheelchair. The glass has to come out before infection sets in. Ms. Rodriguez followed to the hospital. The ER was chaos. A nurse triaged quickly, glass embedded in my heel, multiple cuts that needed care. While they treated me, Margaret made calls for placement. Yes, I understand you're full, she said again and again. This is an emergency cultural marriage situation. No, regular foster won't work. She needs specialized placement. Each call hit the same wall. No beds, no space. Ms. Rodriguez paced our curtained bay. There has to be somewhere. What about safe houses? Women's shelters are full. Margaret sighed. Weekend placements are tough, and in cases like this, families come for the girls. We need secure. A doctor numbed my heel and began removing the glass. I bit my lip, more from fear than pain. Every minute without placement was another chance for my family to find me. Wait, Ms. Rodriguez said suddenly. I know someone, a retired nurse who used to work with the district. She's done emergency placements. Margaret perked up. Is she certified? Let me call. Ms. Rodriguez stepped out and returned with a small smile. Theodora Whitman, certified for emergency placement, experienced with cultural transition cases. She can take her tonight. Relief flooded me as Margaret started paperwork. The doctor bandaged my feet and prescribed antibiotics. As we prepared to leave, a text buzzed from an unknown number. You have dishonored us all. This is not over. Margaret documented it immediately. We'll change your number, she said, and be cautious with social media, anywhere they can track you. The drive to Theodora's house took 40 minutes through neighborhoods far from my community. Ms. Rodriguez followed in her car, refusing to leave until she knew I was safe. The house was modest and tidy, with visible cameras on every corner and a tall fence. Theodora met us at the door, a sturdy woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and gentle hands. She assessed my bandaged feet and exhausted face with a nurse's practiced glance. "Come in, dear. Let's get you settled." Inside was warm and comfortable, the opposite of my family's cold marble and gold. She showed me a small bedroom with a lock on the inside. "For your peace of mind," she said simply. "The windows have alarms and there are motion sensors around the property. You're safe." While Margaret finished paperwork, Ms. Rodriguez helped me unpack my few things. Before she left, she pressed a card into my hand. "My personal number. Call anytime." I barely slept that first night. Every passing car tensed my muscles. Every shadow could be an uncle or cousin. At 3 a.m., Theodora found me at the window, watching the street. "They came for the last girl, too," she said softly, settling beside me. 3 brothers and a father stood at that gate demanding I return their property. Her smile was grim. "Police response time here is under 2 minutes. I made sure." Sunday blurred into safety planning. Theodora helped set up a new phone. Only she, Margaret, and Ms. Rodriguez got the number. We walked through scenarios. What to do if someone approached, how to vary routes, which neighbors were safe. "Tomorrow we'll enroll you in this district," she said. "Under the protective order, you can't go back to Jefferson." The idea of starting over terrified me, but anonymity mattered more than familiar hallways. Monday delivered the first test. The doorbell rang at 6 a.m. The camera showed my aunt and 2 female cousins with food containers, faces arranged in concern. "We know she's here," my aunt called through the intercom. "We just want to talk. Her grandmother is sick with worry." Theodora didn't answer, just called the non-emergency police line. "Yes, the subjects listed in the protective order are at my property, thank you." They left before the patrol car arrived, but not before my cousin held up a sign to the camera, "Come home." The manipulation had begun. That afternoon, Margaret called. "Your father's hired a lawyer. They're claiming parental alienation and demanding your return." Can they do that? They can try. With the protective order and CPS involved, it's unlikely, but be ready for a fight. Tuesday brought flowers, an enormous bouquet left at the door with a card. "Our hearts are broken. Please forgive us. Love, Mama." Theodora photographed everything, then disposed of it. "Document everything," she reminded me. I started at my new school Wednesday, enrolled under sealed records. The counselor briefed on my case, assigned me a buddy, and arranged for me to eat lunch in the library if needed. "We've had similar cases," she said. "Your safety is our priority." Safety felt fragile when I saw a familiar vehicle in the lot after school. Not my father's, he was too careful, but one of my uncle's work trucks parked where everyone leaving had to pass. I ducked back inside and called Theodora from the counselor's office. She arrived in minutes, parked nose to nose with the truck, and walked me to her car while recording everything. "Let them know we see them," she said. "Let them know we're not afraid." Thursday's mail brought legal papers. My father petitioned for my return, claiming I'd been brainwashed and was at risk of losing my cultural identity. Margaret connected me to a legal aid attorney named Patricia, a fierce specialist in cases like mine. "Standard tactics," she said, scanning the filings. "They'll waive religious freedom, parental rights, cultural preservation. We counter with child welfare, documented abuse, and your testimony. Will I have to see them in court? Not if I can help it, but be prepared." Friday morning, the real escalation began. "Check your social media," Theodora said, handing me a borrowed device. "Don't log in, just look." On my father's public Facebook, my photo sat beside a desperate plea. "Please help us find our daughter. She is mentally ill and needs medication. She was taken by people filling her head with lies. We fear for her safety." Comments flooded in, prayers, shares, even reward offers. "This is witness intimidation," Patricia said. "He's trying to control the narrative. We'll respond carefully." By afternoon, the post had hundreds of shares. In our community WhatsApp groups, my picture circulated with warnings about the sick girl who needed help. Then came the first real betrayal. One of the shed girls, My younger cousin Margie, whom I'd tried to protect, posted a video. She sat stiff beside her mother, reciting rehearsed lines. She told us terrible lies about our family, said our parents wanted to hurt us. She made us afraid of our own culture. Please, if you see her, help bring her home so she can get help. My heart shattered seeing her blank eyes, imagining the pressure that forced those words. Theodora held me while I cried. They're using your love against you. That doesn't make you wrong. Saturday, an unexpected visitor arrived. The doorbell camera showed a young woman holding an envelope. I'm from the law office, she called. I have documents for the minor child. Theodora didn't bite. Leave them in the mailbox. But as the woman turned, I caught her profile and gasped. My cousin Sarah, 3 years older, wearing a wig and business clothes. Don't go out, Theodora warned, but I was already at the window. Sarah glanced up. For a split second, her mask slipped and I saw tears. Then she composed herself, set the envelope in the mailbox, and hurried off. Inside were photos. My grandmother frail, my little sister's birthday with my chair empty, my mother crying while cooking my favorite dish, each shot engineered to slice me open. The last photo froze my blood. Anna, back wherever they'd stashed her, standing between her parents with an engagement ring and dead eyes. On the back, she came home. She's happy now. You could be too. They brought her back, I whispered. They're going to make her marry him anyway. This complicates things, Patricia said when we called. If Anna recants, she won't, I said. Look at her eyes. Fear doesn't matter if she won't testify. Sunday's attack was more direct. Theodora's neighbor reported men photographing the house from across the street. They were gone by the time police arrived. The message was obvious. We know where you are. Maybe we should move you, Margaret suggested in an emergency meeting. Theodora shook her head. Running tells them they're winning. We stay, we document, we fight. Monday was the hearing for a long-term protective order. Patricia had prepped me, but nothing prepared me for walking into that room. My entire extended family filled one side. Uncles, aunts, cousins, community leaders, all dressed to impress, all staring with a mix of pity and contempt. My parents sat in the front. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. I took my place beside Patricia, hands shaking under the table. My father's attorney went first, spinning a story about a loving traditional family torn apart by Western corruption. He paraded character witnesses, the imam from our mosque, family friends, even my old pediatrician who swore he'd never seen signs of abuse, because I was never allowed to be alone with him. I whispered to Patricia. My mom answered everything for me. When it was our turn, Patricia presented the evidence piece by piece. Photos of my injuries, my essays, read aloud for their subtext, the security footage of my father arriving, with prescriptions he'd brought to the school, bottles already in hand. Then Ms. Rodriguez testified, calm voice, tense hands, about my weight loss, the pamphlets, the coded essays. Did you report your suspicions? My father's lawyer pressed. I tried to build trust first, she said. I reported when I had concrete evidence. So you didn't follow mandatory reporting immediately, he pounced, after allegedly exposing her to anti-cultural propaganda. Patricia objected, but the damage was done. They painted her as the manipulator. When I took the stand, Patricia kept me grounded in facts. The burn scars from pot training, the belt marks for breaking silence while serving, the men my cousins had been promised to, and the 2 wives of Hamoud Habibi who died before 23. Do you have proof of those deaths? The judge asked. Death certificates are public, Patricia said. Both kidney failure before 23, both multiple pregnancies. My father's lawyer stood. Kidney failure is a medical condition. Are you alleging my client committed I'm alleging a pattern, Patricia cut in. Child brides, repeated pregnancies, premature deaths, and they want to give him another child. Inflammatory, my father's lawyer shouted. The judge called for order, but I could see doubt creasing his brow. Without Anna's testimony, without more than my word, it felt precarious. Then the courtroom doors opened. A young woman in a hijab entered with a CPS worker, walking with a slight limp. "Your Honor," the worker said, "this witness has relevant information." My father went rigid. My mother gasped. The woman stated her name. Fatima Habibi. I was Hamoud Habibi's first wife. I did not die. Chaos erupted. Objections, murmurs, sharp whispers. Once quiet returned, Fatima spoke softly. "I married at 15. By 20, I'd had 4 children. My kidneys were failing. My family told people I died, but a nurse helped me escape. I've been hiding for 5 years. She looked straight at me. "When I saw the posts about you, I knew I had to come. I couldn't let him do to another girl what he did to me." She brought medical records documenting injuries and kidney damage from close-spaced pregnancies, plus photos of the fake grave her family erected. My father's lawyer tried to shred her credibility. He failed. The judge's ruling was firm. The protective order would be permanent. My parents were barred from contact. Violations would be criminal. My father stood, eyes burning. "You are—" "No, daughter of mine," he said in Arabic. "You are dead to us." "Sit down," the judge warned. My mother also rose, pulling off her hijab, a gesture of final rejection. "We have no daughter," she declared. "She died today." Leaving that courtroom felt like walking through fire. Family members turned their backs as I passed. Some spat on the floor. Fatima touched my arm gently. "You are not alone," she whispered. "There are more of us than they admit." Outside, Theodora idled at the curb. As we drove off, my father rallied the family on the courthouse steps, phone pressed to his ear. "It's not over," Patricia said quietly. "They'll escalate." They did. Differently. Since they couldn't contact me directly, they went. After everything around me. My old social media, which I'd deactivated, was hacked and reanimated with posts about mental illness and cries for help. Edited photos made me look unhinged and circulated widely. Shops where Theodora bought groceries began turning her away. "We don't want trouble," one owner said. "Her family is powerful." Civil lawyers filed a flurry of nonsense suits: defamation, emotional distress, alienation of affection. "Harassment by litigation," Patricia explained. "They're trying to drain resources." Worse came through the girls. Videos popped up online. Cousins and family friends repeating carefully scripted lines about how I'd corrupted them. "She told us our parents wanted to sell us," one girl recited. "Made us afraid of our own families." Behind their stiff delivery, I recognized the fear. Theodora doubled down on security after we found fresh footprints in the garden one morning. Police couldn't prove who it was, but we knew someone was watching. "Witness protection?" Margaret suggested. The idea of vanishing for years like Fatima made my stomach twist. "If I run," I said, "I abandon the others." I chose to stay. Then came an offer from a polished stranger. She arrived claiming to be from a cultural mediation service. "We specialize in reconciliation," she smiled. "We could arrange a supervised meeting." Theodora shut the door. The woman left pamphlets about the tragedy of cultural disconnection and the importance of family unity. Others followed: a therapist promoting cultural reintegration, a religious leader offering to mediate, a distant relative begging me to visit my dying grandmother. We documented and reported every approach. The steady drip wore us thin. That's when Patricia called. "Anna wants to meet." My heart leapt, then dropped. "Is it a trap?" "She contacted me through her own lawyer," Patricia said. "Says it's important." We met at Patricia's office with security present. When Anna walked in, I barely recognized her. Thinner, dimmer, moving like something inside had cracked. "They forced me back," she whispered once we were alone. "They said they'd hurt my little sister. I'm sorry." She grabbed my hands. "Listen, they're planning something. I heard my father. They've given up on bringing you home. Now they want to make an example, to show other girls what happens if you betray the family." "What kind of example?" "I don't know," she said, tears in her eyes. "They mentioned your new school, something everyone will understand." "When?" "Soon, maybe this week. They've been studying your routines." On her way out, she slipped me a tiny piece of paper, an address. Other girls, she mouthed. Help them. That night, Theodora and I rebuilt my life around unpredictability. I'd take time off school, alter every routine, never walk alone. We underestimated them. Wednesday morning, Theodora's security panel chirped. Not the perimeter, the window sensor in her bedroom. Bathroom, now, she ordered, calling 911. I sprinted as glass shattered and male voices shouted in Arabic. Hired muscle, not my father or uncles. The bathroom door was solid with a sturdy lock, but the frame began to crack under repeated hits. Police are 3 minutes out, Theodora yelled. Hold on. The doorknob rattled. Come out, girl, a voice coaxed. Don't make it worse. Your family misses you. I scanned for anything to use. Hairspray, a pair of scissors. Not much against grown men. The wood splintered. One more slam and... sirens. Blessed, blaring sirens. The pounding stopped. Footsteps pounded. Away, a door slammed. By the time officers cleared the house, the men had vanished, leaving broken glass and muddy prints. We're moving you tonight, Margaret said, arriving with paperwork and a hard face. This placement is compromised. As I folded my few belongings into a bag, Anna's warning echoed in my head, along with the address she'd given me and the faces of the girls still trapped. I want to do one thing before we go, I told Theodora. I dialed Ms. Rodriguez. Remember those pamphlets? It's time to make more, a lot more. They could move me, threaten me, hunt me, but they couldn't smother the knowledge I'd already lit like a fuse. The war for my freedom wasn't over. But as we drove away from Theodora's breached home toward a new placement, I held something stronger than fear, the certainty that I'd already won the fight that mattered most. I had proved it was possible to say no, to survive the fallout, to choose a different life, and that truth would travel, whether my family liked it or not. The new safe place was 40 miles away, a compact apartment perched above a retired police officer's garage. Margaret explained he'd done this before, sheltering girls whose families wouldn't stop searching. The security here was heavier than Theodora's, motion sensors, cameras, and panic buttons mounted in every room. That first night, I sat awake, staring at the address Anna had slipped me, a house number in a neighborhood I knew, a cluster where more families from our community lived, more girls who needed to know they had choices. Ms. Rodriguez showed up, the next morning with boxes of supplies. We decided to build information packets, more than pamphlets, camouflaged as schoolwork. We hid resources inside spiral notebooks, wrote phone numbers as math problems, and tucked legal rights into history homework. We'll funnel them through school nurses, she said. They're mandated reporters and spot-at-risk students. While we cut, folded, and glued, Patricia called with updates. The men who broke into Theodora's house had been identified by fingerprints, distant cousins on my father's side. Warrants were out, but they'd already fled the state. Also, she added, your family filed an appeal on the protective order, religious discrimination. We kept working. The packets took 3 days to assemble. We made 50, knowing suspicious parents might toss most. But if even one landed in the right hands, it could change everything. By Thursday, a new development arrived at our door with a social worker. She brought a teenage girl, wide-eyed, shaking, her story heartbreakingly familiar. Promised to a 47-year-old. Her period came last week. I found your notebook, she whispered. Hidden in my cousin's room, the one with the math problems that were really phone numbers. My chest lifted. The papers were traveling beyond my reach. While Margaret arranged emergency placement, I sat with her and explained each step. Slowly, fear shifted to steel in her eyes. Options had a way of doing that. That night, my new phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it. Don't hang up, a young voice rushed. I'm using a friend's phone. We're 6 girls. We found your information. We need help. Ages 12 to 16, 3 already promised. They met in secret, passing notebook pages like contraband. Can you reach teachers? Counselors? I asked. We're trying, but our parents watch us now, since what you did. I gave them specific phrases to say, the names of teachers in different schools who would act, and had them repeat emergency hotlines back to me. I described the courthouse security cameras and how to ask for emergency orders. What if they catch us? Her voice trembled. Then you try again, I said, and again, until you're free. Friday morning, Patricia called urgent. Your father's attorney filed an emergency motion. They're accusing you of recruiting minors into dangerous situations, pushing for criminal charges for teaching girls their legal rights. They're calling it corruption of minors and interference with parental rights. Will it stick? No, it's designed to silence you. I refused to be quiet. That afternoon, I met with a journalist Ms. Rodriguez trusted, a human rights reporter. She promised anonymity, no photos, no real names, and wanted to cover the underground network of girls sharing information. The piece wouldn't run for weeks, but knowing it would exist felt like oxygen. Saturday's mail brought a small box with no return address, postmarked from another state. Inside were photos and a letter in careful, shaky handwriting. The pictures showed a young woman in nursing scrubs at graduation, grinning. The letter was from Fatima. I wanted you to see what's possible, she wrote. 5 years in hiding, but I built a life, became a nurse, found love with someone who sees me beyond being someone's property. Stay strong. I sobbed holding those photos, proof that life after survival could be more than just endurance. Sunday, Margaret called with numbers that meant everything. 3 more girls came forward today, different families. Each cited the packets. CPS is opening investigations. The backlash arrived right on its heels. Monday, my father's lawyer stood on the courthouse steps for cameras, telling the world I was a troubled teen wrecking families, feeding Western ideology to innocent children. Community leaders flanked him, nodding gravely. She targets vulnerable girls, he intoned. Patricia countered with statements from teachers, social workers, and counselors who had seen the pattern for years but didn't know how to help. The retired officer I lived with even spoke about the extraordinary measures families took to reclaim girls. It helped, but then came the gut punch. Tuesday, a video surfaced. Margie again, my younger cousin from the shed, this time with 4 other girls from our wife skills circle. In flat voices, they recited how I'd tried to turn them against their parents. She said our culture is wrong, one said, made us hate who we are. I could hear the coaching in every carefully chosen word, see the fear behind their eyes. Don't watch anymore, the retired officer advised, closing the laptop. They're trying to break you. Wednesday, everything sped up. The journalist's editor had received legal threats. My father's lawyer claimed defamation, promising ruinous lawsuits. Then Margaret arrived with the worst news. One of the girls who called you, her family found out. They're moving her out of state tomorrow. I didn't have to ask which. I knew. Samira, 16. She was scheduled to meet a counselor today. The courthouse, I said. If she can get there before they take her. Margaret was already on the phone, alerting authorities. But everyone knew the reality. Once a girl crossed state lines or borders, she often vanished. That afternoon, I insisted on going near the courthouse, despite every warning. Not inside, too risky, but close enough that Samira might see me. The retired officer drove and parked where we could watch the doors. 2 tense hours crawled by. Then a van pulled up, and I saw her, Samira, wedged between 2 ants. Not protection, escorts, for passports, for exit. She glanced toward our car, and for half a heartbeat our eyes met. I pressed my palm to the glass and mouthed one word, run. She didn't bolt, couldn't, with hands clamped on her arms, but at the security checkpoint she collapsed, screaming about stomach pain. Classic misdirection from my playbook. Officers rushed over, calling for medical help. In the confusion, Samira latched onto an officer's sleeve and wouldn't let go. I couldn't hear her words, but I watched his face change. He spoke into his radio. More officers appeared. Her aunts tugged, insisting she was fine. But Samira kept screaming, kept gripping that officer like a lifeline. Within minutes, CPS showed up. We need to move, the retired officer said, turning the key. As we drove off, I saw my uncle step from the van, phone at his ear, chopping the air with his free hand. They'd lost another one. Thursday blurred into back-to-back legal strategy sessions. Patricia cataloged everything, every threat, every drive-by, every social post, every mediation attempt, and began building a case for intimidation and harassment. "We're drawing a line," she said, stacking exhibits. The journalist, meanwhile, told us her editor had been hit with legal threats. Defamation, tortious interference, you name it. Another outlet stepped up anyway, willing to take the risk. And more girls were surfacing, not only from my community, but from others who'd heard whispers about hidden notebooks and coded math problems. "You started something," Patricia said, "something they can't contain." Friday woke me with sirens. Not unusual here, but these stopped outside. The retired officer checked the cameras. "Stay back," he ordered, palm on his holster. Through the window, flames licked into the sky. A car sat in the lot burning, one we'd never seen before. Firefighters popped the trunk and pulled out a grotesque display, charred dolls dressed as brides, melted veils fused to plastic. The message was unmistakable. "We move tonight," Margaret said when she arrived, voice hard. I shook my head. "They want me hidden and afraid. I'm done giving them what they want." Hours of argument later, we compromised. I'd stay, but with beefed-up security, off-duty officers on rotation, panic buttons routed directly to 911, and my sleeping location varied so I never stayed in the same place twice. Saturday delivered an unexpected bolt of light. The article posted online early and went viral by noon. Comments flooded in from women who'd lived versions of my story, offering resources, safe houses, attorneys. Organizations I'd never heard of reached out to help scale the information network. The best message came from Anna, a simple text from an unknown number. 12 girls in 3 states now have the notebooks. They're making copies. You did it. I held the phone until my hands stopped shaking. Sunday was quiet, but it felt like the breath a storm takes before breaking. My family wouldn't tolerate open defiance without a final move. It arrived Monday morning, not with fists, but with ink, a formal announcement in the community bulletin. I had been officially disowned, not just by my parents, but by the entire extended family. My name erased from family trees, photos removed from homes. Anyone who spoke to me risked the same fate. In their universe, it was a punishment worse than death. Erasure. As I read it, something unexpected washed over me. Relief. They'd played their last card, and I was still standing. Tuesday brought the ripple I'd hoped for. Girls who'd been watching, waiting, realized the worst they could imagine hadn't. Destroyed me. 3 emergency orders were filed that day alone. 2 girls made it to shelters. 1 was intercepted, but not before she got to a teacher and triggered a report. On Wednesday, I sat down with leaders from the organizations that had reached out. They wanted to formalize what had begun in whispers, an actual network with legal backing, vetted safe houses, and trained responders who understood cultural dynamics. "We'll call it the Freedom Network," one woman said. "Hidden in plain sight like your notebooks." Heads nodded around the table. It felt like building a bridge for girls still trapped on the far side. Thursday was court again. This time, a hearing related to renewing and expanding protections. The courtroom overflowed. Not with my family this time, but with girls and women who'd escaped, social workers who'd stepped in, teachers who'd paid attention. My father's lawyer tried one last angle. The formal disownment proved they wanted no contact. "Disownment doesn't erase threats made or crimes committed," the judge replied crisply. "The order stands." Outside, Fatima waited. She'd driven 3 hours just to be there so I could see a future in her face. We didn't need words. We hugged while photographers clicked. 2 girls who refused to vanish. Friday, the Freedom Network held its first official meeting. 15 volunteers showed up. Ms. Rodriguez, Theodora, a few school nurses, 2 social workers, even a counselor who'd handled cases like mine. We sketched distribution routes for the hidden information packets, mapped a small circuit of vetted safe houses, and set up emergency response protocols so a girl would never be left waiting for help. What began with a forgotten drawer and stolen pamphlets was turning into a real system with people, plans, and backup plans. That night, my phone rang again. Another blocked number, another whispering voice. "I found your notebook," she said, barely audible. "Can you help me?" "Yes," I told her, grabbing a pen. "Tell me everything." As she talked, I pictured the bedrooms and backyards I'd run through, the sheds where girls rehearsed the words, the bus, doors held open by strangers who didn't ask questions. The network would keep growing, hand to hand, hallway to hallway, classroom to classroom. Some girls would make it out, some wouldn't. Not yet. But every single one who learned her rights was a win they couldn't undo. My family had scrubbed me from their lineage, declared me a ghost. But I'd become something they couldn't erase, proof that their daughters could choose another path. That knowledge would move like current, through whispers and dog-eared notebook pages, through nurses who recognized the signs and teachers who knew what to ask, through brave girls who risked everything because they finally knew there were words to say and people who would listen. In the weeks that followed, we kept the rotation going. Different couches, different spare rooms, never the same bed twice. Off-duty officers took shifts. Theodora trained 2 new foster families on cultural safety plans. Mr. Williams, the school security guard, showed other campuses how to preserve video fast when a girl asks for help. Patricia knocked down legal threats one by one. Appeals were denied. The baseless civil suits started to wither once judges saw the stack of evidence and the pattern of intimidation. The article finally ran in print and online, then ricocheted across timelines I'd never seen before. Comments poured in from women, who'd once been me, some living in shelters, some now holding degrees, some raising children they chose to have. Organizations reached out with translators, transport volunteers, trauma counselors who understood the mix of grief and relief that comes with leaving. We set up a discreet intake line, routed through a homework help voicemail that only rang through if you said the right phrase. Hidden in plain sight. The harassment didn't vanish, but it changed flavor. More whispers than shouts. A car idled too long some afternoons and then slipped away. Anonymous accounts tried to bait me online. I didn't bite. When my father's lawyer made noise about new suits, Patricia answered with filings of our own, documented attempts to locate me in violation of the order, screenshots, timestamps, sworn statements. The more sunlight we poured on their tactics, the less power those tactics held. Nights were still gray with memory. I startled at doorbells and flinched at sudden footsteps in hallways that weren't mine. But the fear that once ruled me had been edged out by something sturdier. Purpose. Every time the phone rang, I remembered the bus driver's quiet mercy, the courthouse clerk's swift kindness, the nurse's steady hands, the teacher who forgot to lock a drawer. The freedom. Network grew branches. School nurses tucked our camouflaged packets into backpacks. Counselors flagged patterns sooner. A pediatrician asked for training after realizing he'd never spoken to some patients alone. We refined the scripts girls could use with mandated. Reporters translated them into 3 more languages and built a map of courthouses with fast-track judges. We learned which shelters could keep a girl truly off the grid and which needed coaching. One evening, I was packing a new batch of notebooks. When my phone buzzed again, a blocked number, a breath at the edge of silence. "I found one of your pages," a girl whispered. "The history homework that isn't." I pictured a dim bedroom and a door without a lock. "You're not alone," I said. "Repeat after me." I gave her the same precise words that had once felt like a secret spell, enough to trigger duty, enough to open doors. She repeated them back, voice shaking, then steadier. I wrote down her teacher's name, gave her 2 others in case the first didn't listen, told her where the courthouse cameras were and how to ask for a judge. When she hung up, I didn't exhale right away. I stared at the little stack of notebooks, at the math problems that were really phone numbers, at the pocket that hid a map to a life. I thought of Fatima's letter and her smile in those graduation photos, of Samira on the marble floor, of Anna's dead eyes in that picture and the single text that meant the fuse was still burning. 12 girls in 3 states now have the notebooks. They're making copies. The war wasn't finished. Maybe it would never be, not completely. There would be more courtrooms, more coded threats, more girls who couldn't run yet. But as I stayed on the line with another terrified voice and handed her the words that could pry open a door, I understood that we had already won the fight that mattered most. We had shown it was doable, to refuse, to choose differently, to keep breathing after their rejection. And that proof was traveling faster than fear. They erased me from family trees, but they couldn't erase what I'd become to the girls who were still waiting. A living contradiction to the story that said they had no choice. That story was cracking along the seams of a drawer left open, in a courthouse lobby, through a bus door held by a stranger, inside a notebook passed from hand to trembling hand. We'd already proven the thing they were most afraid of, that a daughter can say no.